The Constitution allowed for, or the OSHA Act rather, allowed for states to adopt state-run OSHA programs. So what we do and what our role is with those state-run OSHA programs is we have oversight of those programs to make sure those state plans are as effective as what the federal program is. So we monitor the state plans to make sure that their laws, regulations, standards, policies, procedures, things like that, things they're doing are equivalent to what we're doing or more stringent. They're allowed to adopt laws and regulations that are actually more stringent than what federal OSHA is, but they have to be at least as effective as what the federal program is. So that's what my role is in Tennessee and Kentucky. A little bit about me, I'm a West Virginia hillbilly. I'm sure one of my legs is longer than the other, slightly, but not a lot. I've never noticed it. I attended West Virginia University, got a degree in safety engineering and a master's in safety environmental management. When I left school, I went to work in the private sector in the poultry industry where I worked for about 3 or 4 years. Decided that wasn't for me and moved over to what a lot of people call the dark side, which is federal OSHA. I took a job in Atlanta as a compliance officer, as a safety engineer. Moved from Atlanta, Georgia, spent 10 years in Atlanta, was promoted to a supervisor, and from a supervisor was promoted to an area director. And I've been in Nashville now I'm in my 11th year. One of the things I'm proud of in my career is 21 years with OSHA, I've never applied for another job. Never thought about applying for another job. It's been extremely rewarding for me, and I'll tell you, I love it. I love what I do. I don't do it for a paycheck. It's a passion. My goal in my career is to join the unemployment line. Because once people like me start hitting the unemployment line, folks like you start hitting the unemployment line, that means we don't have people dying on the job, we don't have people injured on the job, we don't have people suffering occupational illnesses from their employment. So, very passionate about my job. I've got a CSP. If you've never pursued certification, I highly recommend it. If you don't do it for your job, do it for yourself. It gives you a lot of credential in the field of safety and health. And I've been told that all of you are in safety and health. How many people in here has had any type of dealings with OSHA? Okay, not a lot. How many people in here would call OSHA for help? Everybody raise your hand. Come on. Everybody raise your hand. Honest to God, you've heard the jokes. Hi, I'm Bill, I'm from OSHA, and I'm here to help. Honest to God, that is absolutely true. We are there to help. We are a resource. We can be one of the greatest resources you have. So do not be afraid to call us. Call us anytime. I can tell you, I'm very active at Fort Campbell, Fort Knox, and Arnold Air Base. Those folks call me all the time when they're having an issue, whether it's an internal issue that they need help with, but they have contractors on their facilities all the time. I saw construction going on in here. They're trying to get these contractors to do what they need to be doing, and they're not listening or they're thumbing their noses at you. I promise you, you call me, they're not thumbing their nose at you. We're going to come on base, we're going to reinforce what you all are telling them, and it's going to help you. Do it all the time. Fort Knox calls me all the time and says, hey, can you come do some landscaping inspections? We got guys out here cutting grass and guards on their mowers, their rops are down, they're mowing on hillsides. Someone's going to get hurt. We've told them, can you come do some inspections? Absolutely. We'll be there as soon as we can. And we do that all the time. What I want to talk to you about today is I'm going to talk to you about OSHA, what we do, some of the things that we've got going on, and also incorporate what your role is as far as OSHA is concerned. This is Alexander Acosta. He is the Secretary of Labor. He's my boss at the highest level. He was appointed by, or nominated by Donald J. Trump to be the Secretary of Labor. Lauren Sweat was appointed on July 24th as OSHA's Deputy Assistant Secretary for OSHA. So she is, right now, she is our highest level official. We do not have an Assistant Secretary for OSHA yet. There's been several candidates. I don't know if anybody saw the Hardee's commercials with the half-naked ladies in them and stuff like that. The gentleman from Hardee's was nominated. That didn't go over too well because of those commercials and stuff. And right now, and I don't know what's going on with it, but the president or vice president of safety and health for FedEx is actually the current nominee. He was actually going through confirmation, and that all halted because of the end of the session. And now that they pick back up, we're waiting to see if he's going to be nominated again or not, and whether it's going to go through confirmation. Congressional mandate. The mission of OSHA, it's the same as yours. If anybody in here doesn't have the same mission to save lives, prevent injuries, and protect the health and safety of your employees, you're missing something. I'm sure that is part of your mission, a big part of your mission. OSHA, we're not the reason why you do what you do. We're not the reason to do what you do. We're a necessary element of safety and health because we do have, I was listening to the previous speaker, I was listening to some of the questions, and I was really impressed. And we're there, we've got a lot of employers who don't do what you do. We got a lot of employers that don't comply, that don't have safety and health programs, that aren't protecting their workers. They're just getting by. That's why we're there. We're there to force it. But we're not there to make you all do what you're doing. You're doing what you're doing because it's the right thing to do. We've got different ways of doing business, and we've got different elements. One of the things is we encourage employers and police in their efforts to reduce hazards. We want you to do it. We want you to do it on your own. We don't want to do it through enforcement. We want to provide technical assistance, compliance assistance, information, things like that, resources for employers to comply and to protect their workers and reduce their injuries and illnesses. We develop and promulgate safety and health laws. Our regulations, 1910, 1926, 1915, 1917, 1918. That's what we do. We've developed some recent standards with silica, with beryllium. Really not developed because those were standards prior to, but we've made them more stringent. Effective enforcement through worksite inspections. We do a lot of worksite inspections. And we do those enforcement inspections. There's different types of inspections we do. Our primary priority is what we call imminent danger. An imminent danger inspection is when we get notification, either through complaint or referral, that there's a safety or health condition, a hazard, that employees are exposed to that's likely to cause death. We respond to those immediately. Some of the things we consider to be imminent danger. Anybody familiar with trenching work? You have trenching work going on your bases. Trenching is critical. It is an imminent danger. It is a killer. Unsafe operation of powered industrial trucks. Fall hazards, and you'll see fall hazards are our leading killers. Things like that, confined space. I know you all deal with confined spaces. Those are the things that we look at with imminent danger. Anytime we get calls on those types of issues, we're going to address immediately. Our next priority are fatalities and accidents. We investigate fatalities and accidents. Fatality investigations are extremely important to me because, first off, we've got to prevent those accidents from happening again. And second off, we need to provide those family members with answers as to what happened to their loved ones. We need to let them know what happened and why it happened. They happen every day. They happen every day. My 21-year career, I have dealt with at least 150 fatalities, fatal accidents where individuals have died. I was just telling Joe earlier, my 10 years in Nashville, I had 4 fatalities up to this year. Had 4 total deaths up to this year, which is 4 too many, but that's great compared to what it used to be. In the last 6 months, I've had 4 deaths. In the last 6 months. One was from one incident where there was an explosion on a tugboat. Killed 3 individuals. But they can and do happen. Anybody in here familiar with Voluntary Protection Program, VPP? I'm sure you've heard that. We've got a VPP site right now, but we're investigating a fatality at a VPP site. It happens. Yeah, but it happens. You know, you cannot let your guard down. You cannot let your guard down. What you're doing is critical. You know, I was listening to the last presentation, which I really hate to go after somebody like that because he was really good, and what he was saying was spot on. What he was saying was spot on. You know, and you have to evaluate the hazards. You have to do those risk assessments. You know, a risk assessment is nothing more than planning. And you know, I had some, you know, one of my trainers back when I was a young safety professional that told me you're either planning, and when you're not planning, you're still planning, but you're planning to fail. When you're not planning. So you're either planning or you're planning to fail. Either way, you're planning something. And you know, it's critical to do those risk assessments. So we've got our enforcement. We provide training programs. You know, we have what's called Susan Harwood grants, where organizations can come in, such as ASSE, apply for a Susan Harwood grant to provide training in a specific area. We had one a couple years ago that was specific, and it was through a Latino group, and it was specific to non-English speaking safety professionals, to train them in the OSHA standards and things like that, to help them provide assistance to non-English speaking workers. So, you know, a lot of those programs are really good. And we encourage states to operate effective programs through federal grants, as I mentioned. You know, the state plans, they have federal grants. They're 50-50 funded minimum, 50% federal funding, 50% state funding. The state has to match dollar for dollar what we in the federal program provide to them. They are allowed to overmatch. An example, Kentucky overmatches 69% to 31%. So, you know, 69% of their program is state funded. But they still have to answer to us as far as their effectiveness. We want to take a balanced approach with OSHA enforcement. And I can tell you from my 21 years of experience, hard enforcement is not the answer. That's not going to work. No enforcement and compliance assistance is not going to work because we still have those employers who don't want to comply or who don't have the resources to comply or for whatever reason aren't complying. We want strong, fair, and effective enforcement. We've got to have that. We've got to be able to leverage our resources and to let those employers know that it's expected. It's something they have to do. Outreach and compliance assistance. All employers, we want to educate in safety and health. We want to provide that compliance assistance on what they need to do. The new silica standard. You know, we need to go out and do compliance assistance so employers know how to comply with the new requirements. You know, if you don't, you're not going to get compliance. We're just going to have a whole lot of enforcement with a lot of citations. But what good is that doing if employers aren't learning how to protect those workers? You know, they have to know what they need to do. Cooperative and voluntary programs. That's our alliances, partnerships, VBP, and SHARPs. we want employers to take their safety and health programs to another level. That's why we have programs like VPP, is we want those programs, we want employers to come into those programs and say, hey, OSHA's minimum. We're going to exceed what OSHA requires. We're going to do more, and we want other employers to do more. And through those programs, you know, there's other things through those programs that benefit other employers through them mentoring other facilities, other companies to bring them into the VPP. And I'll tell you, you know, one of the most impressive sites I ever saw with VPP was a Dow Chemical facility in Georgia. When we originally did the VPP evaluation, they had 5 levels of management. And it was I don't know if you all are familiar with process safety management. It was a PSM covered facility, and they had 5 levels of management. I wasn't on the original team doing the original VPP. I went on the recertification team because I was a PSM specialist. So we went in, when we went in for 3 years later for the recertification, that employer had 2 plant managers because they had 2 facilities, they had a latex plant and a styrofoam plant. They only had 2 plant managers. They had no other supervisors or managers at that site. It was entirely employee run. It's one of the most impressive things I ever saw in my life. I don't know if you've ever really dealt with PSM. It's an extremely complicated standard to comply with. It's a lot of work, a lot of detail, a lot of paperwork, which I know you all are familiar with. Those employees took me in a room, and anything I asked for, they stuck it in front of me. I've had companies with engineers that could not provide me what those hourly employees were providing me with the PSM. I mean, just really impressive. They had a work process program where everybody's familiar with hot work, cutting and welding. You got to have a hot work permit. They had a permitting system. Something as simple as changing a light bulb in a lamp required a work permit. And that gets back to your risk assessment, your job hazard analysis. I mean, they had to complete that work permit to change a light bulb and a lamp, and it had to be signed off on by a specific individual that they covered all the hazards associated with changing that light bulb and a lamp. That facility did not have injuries. They did not have illnesses. They did not have fatalities. It was so impressive.
About how many people were employed there, you think?
It's 500 or something. Yeah, it was a little over 500 for both facilities. They considered it to be one site, but there were 2 plants on one site. But yeah, for both facilities, there were a little over 500 people. Extremely impressive. And that's what we want to see. And I firmly believe, and I've had a lot of experience with our military, especially the Air Force, Air National Guard, the stuff you're talking about today, that's what VPP entails. It's the very stuff that was being covered before I come up here. So we want to see y'all do that. We've been in this for over 46 years now. 1971. Since 1971, workplace fatality has decreased 60%. What do you think about that? 60% is huge. That's amazing. Occupational injuries and illness have declined 40%. You know, once again, that's great. But here's the but. In my opinion, one person dies of cement. We got one person that dies in this country, I still got a job to do. Because it's too many, it can happen. Every year more than 4,000 die. 50,000 workers die from illnesses. The illnesses is something that's really unique. We don't really know how many people die from work-related illnesses. I mean, I just lost my dad 2 years ago as a Vietnam casualty to dioxin-related lung cancer. So, you know, Vietnam is a prime example, still claiming the lives of American soldiers that was there, you know, back in the 60s. Still have soldiers dying. One of the 4 million workers suffer serious non-fatal injury. You know, back to the illnesses, my grandfather died from asbestosis, worked in a power plant. From his last exposure was in 1971, he died in 1991. That was never captured as a work-related death. But it was a work-related death, because that's what took his life. I mean, how many people in here think workplace accidents are preventable? All workplace accidents. Every workplace accident. I do. I hate the word accident because it's not an accident. There was a failure somewhere. It gets back to your risk assessment. There was a failure somewhere. I heard the question asked before when the guy was standing up here, talking about blame. We want to blame somebody. The first person you should look at before you blame anybody is yourself. Where we as management, we as a safety professional, we as management, where did we fail that this employee got injured? Because there's a failure somewhere. I've not seen an accident yet. There may be some employee misconduct involved. There may be something unique to that. All accidents are preventable. Please don't ever tell yourself anything different, because we're never going to get to zero if we don't think that way. You have to have the mindset that all accidents are preventable. Find those failures because they're there. If you dig deep enough, if you dig hard enough, you will identify those failures. Mentioned the tugboat explosion, claimed 3 lives. We're now 3 months into the investigation. Did not have a clue as to what caused the explosion. Okay, it was dry dock. It was a tugboat that was dry docked. It had sunk on the Mississippi River a couple years prior. The company bought the tugboat back and was rebuilding the tugboat. There was no chemicals in the tugboat whatsoever. It had been gutted. There was a couple water chambers in the center of the tugboat. 2 things, we identified a few things, which is oxyacetylene from cutting and welding. They had brought propane salamander heaters in for heat as well as to dry the water tanks because they were working on the water tanks. They needed to paint them. Well, brought in all these experts. The company brought in all these experts. State police come in, brought in experts, decided it was propane from the propane cylinders. Had leaked, somebody didn't turn them off. They leached into the water tanks. Then when they fired up either when they fired up the torches or someone lit a cigarette, that was your ignition source. We're in the investigation now, 3 months in. Everybody's already accepted that it was propane. Guess what? It wasn't propane. We've got another source that was never identified, that we've identified just through digging, through investigating, through asking questions. Just tons of questioning. We've got right now. I've got enough paper for this accident investigation to fill up a complete 4-foot wide filing cabinet. You keep digging, you'll find that failure. And we've identified the failures of that accident. But you got to keep digging. If we give up on the first month, we'd never know what happened. The family would never know what happened. And you just got to be persistent and keep digging. Workplace injuries and fatalities cost our economy almost $2 billion a year. I mean, how much is that? It's a lot of money. That's why OSHA is not the reason to do this. It's good business. It's just good business. It's costing our economy and our society way too much. And that's just in dollars. That's not even considering the lives that are lost, the human part of it. First off, what's the leading killer in this country? Falls. I had mentioned that earlier. Anybody know what the second is?
For women, it's workplace violence is the first one, right?
It really doesn't include workplace violence.
Something looks like industry or...
Actually, automobile accidents and workplace violence are probably the two leading. Those are, I'm not dismissing those as being workplace accidents, but those really, because of what happens with those and because of the criminal element in those really aren't figured in and calculated into the actual workplace accidents, I don't think. I think that it's slowly coming around, and you're going to slowly start seeing those statistics and stuff added in there, but it's just not really been a part of it. The biggest killer in Region 4, which is the 8 southeast states, which is our region, which we cover, is actually struck by. So we got Falls, struck by, and then nationally struck by is number 2. Way too many people, and it's some of the most ridiculous stuff that you can imagine. FedEx trucks, UPS trucks, backing over people. Trucks coming over into pedestrian walk lanes and striking, semi-trucks. Employees leaving for the day, going to get in their car, and they get run over by a semi-truck, and the semi-truck comes over into the pedestrian walk lane. Just basic, simple stuff. And what is a big problem with those struck by accidents? We had a fatality about 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago. I get really bothered by the fatalities. One time I knew every single victim that I ever dealt with, that I ever was involved in an accident. It got to be too many, I couldn't remember them all. We had one that happened one day, and it was actually a FedEx truck that backed over a guy at a loading dock. And the FedEx driver had just got out of the truck, pulled in, got out of the truck, dropped something in the shipping office, signs for it, got back in his truck, just in a hurry, and backed over an individual, killed him. I was on my way home, just thinking about things, which shouldn't be driving distracted, but I promise you I was that day, because my mind was not on driving, it was on what in the world, how do you stop these things from happening? Just these simple, basic things from happening. And when you deal with it enough, you kind of personalize it, and you think how lucky you are to be going home when there's another worker here that's not going home to their wife or their husband or their kids. To me, that's what I think about. The human part of it really hits me. So I was riding home one day, my wife asked me to stop and get some bread. So I stopped at a Kroger grocery store, and I backed in, and I sat there for 30 minutes, and I just watched people. If you've never done this, sit in a parking lot for 30 minutes and do nothing but just watch people and think about what they're doing. It was so effective with me when I was watching it. I went home and got my son at the time, who was 15 years old, driver's permit, and I took his butt back to Kroger and sat there for another 30 minutes and made him watch and tell me everything he said. I mean, that's how, and to this day, my son will not back out of a parking space without his head clearing the back seat. He does not use his mirrors. He turns his body clear around when he backs out looking out the back window because of that experience. Right here was one of the biggest problems I saw. Right here. Talking on the phone, calling. You know what my second biggest issue I saw with those accidents? Or I mean, not with accidents, but with people. Come here, come here, come here, yeah. And you got a lot of the same stuff going on at work with people telling other people what to do. Things are moving. It's just distraction. And really put some thought to that, because I'm telling you, some of the easiest accidents to prevent are these struck by accidents. It really is. This is what you have right here, and this is kind of the breakdown of our citations by hazard, and you can see we cite a lot of falls. That's why falls is one of our leading killers. Struck by caught in. Same thing. That's the automobile, struck bys, things like that. That's the trenching. That's those types of things. In machine guarding, where you got something unguarded and someone gets caught up in it, or gets struck by something. Look at HASCOM. HASCOM's way down the list. It used to be number one. It used to be number one every year.
You guys spend money and time in employers that's active, so you've been driven out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was the effort. You're absolutely right.
We'll look at electrical, although that is
Yeah.
another national emphasis.
And believe, yes, it is. It's another national emphasis item. We've really seen a downtick in electrocutions. Have not seen nearly, I remember back in the 90s when I was a compliance officer, we was doing electrocutions, seemed like daily. We had electrocutions where people died from electrical shock, injuries from electrical shock. And by the way, that is one of the most expensive injuries that you'll ever have, if you ever have one to deal with. A good friend of mine in Atlanta owns an electrical contracting business. He's now retired, his son's running it, but he's got a major, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Cleveland Electric. Jimmy Cleveland. I was sitting in a meeting with him one day, and it was actually an alliance meeting, because we had an alliance with the Atlanta Electrical Contractors Association. He said, Bill, I don't do this. I don't do what I do because of OSHA. He had 350 service trucks and spent money in one pot to suit every single one of those trucks with NFPA 70E equipment to protect his workers from arc flash. Okay, that's not cheap, 350, and I bet you probably a couple grand per truck. Never even thought about it. Never even thought about it. He said, Bill, I don't do this because of OSHA. I do it because it's good business. It's just good business. The average electrical burn, he showed me on paper, he said, the average electrical burn, he said, not a death, not one where the guy's in the hospital for months and a year, but just the average electrical burn is $1 million. And he put it on paper and showed me on paper, line by line, this is how I add up to $1 million. I know because that's what costs me money. That's what's taken out of my pocket, my profits. So, think about that. Knee injury, average knee injury costs you $80,000. Easily. Easily. Some of our national emphasis programs, and I'm glad you brought that up, is that's how we've attacked some of these hazards, is just through national emphasis programs. We do every year, every administration, we're looking at, okay, what hazards are killing people, what hazards are hurting people, in what industry sectors are these hazards happening, and we're developing and formatting our plan to attack these injuries and illness rates and these fatality rates. And that's how we come up with these emphasis programs. Some of the ones we have right now, we have lead, silica, hexachrome, isocyanate exposure. Those are our health, primarily. Combustible dust. Combustible dust is another big one. Anybody know what happened in Savannah, Georgia about 8 years ago, 10 years ago? Anybody hear about the sugar plant in Savannah? I think it killed 13 people. It was a combustible dust explosion. It was sugar dust. Sugar is in the sugar that's on our tables and in our cabinets at home and we put in our food. Very highly combustible, and it killed 13 people. We have a emphasis on combustible dust. A lot of organizations have pushed OSHA, filed lawsuits for emergency standards on combustible dust, but it's just not that simple. But we are doing combustible dust emphasis and doing inspections and looking at it on any inspection where we identify combustible dust. Amputations. Our amputations involve cutting equipment, slicers, shears, saws, just anything like that, anywhere we go, woodworking, metal fab, any place that uses things that cut to try to reduce those amputations. process safety management, chemical processing. We're doing a lot of inspections in chemical processing facilities. And that's in response to some of the accidents you've heard of over the last 5 years or so on all these explosions at these fertilizer plants, chemical plants. I think BP had a big one in Louisiana at a refinery. So we're putting a lot of emphasis in refineries, chemical plants, things like that, doing inspections. Primary metals, that's metal recycling. So if you have any place that takes in metal recycling where they're cutting, car recycling, aluminum, anything like that is covered under this metals emphasis program. Shipbreaking and federal agencies. Federal agencies is particularly interest to you all. We have an emphasis on federal agencies. We're looking at injury and illness rates for particular federal agencies and doing inspections to try to drive down injury and illness rates in the federal government. Believe it or not, it's pretty high. It's pretty high.
Silica.
Yeah.
I don't know if you silica standard came off. Wow. And the industry's been kind of falling around for it.
Yep.
And they're saying, you can't control it, and they're telling them to tell it what it was, well, I don't know what it was, something right there it was, but, how are you guys handling that? On construction works on it? So we have a lot of contractors on that base.
Yeah.
You know, and then like, you know, last fall I saw a dude who's using a dry saw cut concrete, you couldn't see in front of the building. So I was like, no bueno there. It's so.
Yeah, and you'll get an overexposure in less than 15 minutes on that.
Yes.
Easily. I mean, less than 15 minutes, you got an overexposure.
So if they're using the proper equipment with a water tank on it, and a vacuum and all that,
yep.
I mean, it is going to generate some, but you know.
It's not likely if they're wet cutting and using a ventilation system like that. It's not likely you're going to get them over the permissible exposure limits. If it's effective and it's working properly, the equipment's working properly, and then also with the wet cutting's huge. Wet cutting cuts it way down to where it's highly unlikely you're going to get overexposure if you keep it wet. But see, the problem we've got with wet cutting, and I don't mean to drag on, but the problem we got with wet cutting is a lot of architects, like you're building buildings, a lot of architects won't let you wet cut brick because they say it changes the aesthetics of the brick.
Oh.
It might change the color, it might change, you know, where it's cut, it might look different. So a lot of architects don't want to wet cut. So, you know, that's the issue. But as far as your question, you know, we're moving forward with enforcement on that.
I guess it's an educational time over, and now it's enforcement.
It is. We're still doing a lot of compliance assistance and outreach on it. But it's, I can't remember what the new enforcement date is. They've changed it so many times that I think it may be next month in May.
I just went to an ASSU meeting, and you're out and left them word, like, there's no way to comply with this no matter what, you know, no matter what piece of equipment you buy or something like that, you'll never meet the compliance requirements.
We're having the same thing with Brilliant. Some of the, especially older facilities with Brilliant, their complaints are they'll never be able to comply, that they need to be able to use respiratory protection in order to do the work they do, or they're going to have to basically tear down their facilities and their plants and start over. So
the bottom right picture where he's cutting the concrete as a Cochran, you go up and
yep,
that's a no.
see that. That's how you didn't sample it, so how do you get a baseline to say you're overexposed? Even though common sense tells you it was, and the wind is.
Well, if you've got an industrial hygienist with you, hopefully if they're ready to sample, they can hang a pump right there and start sampling when they see that.
And the guy stops.
If not, we're going to come back tomorrow and conduct sampling, or the next day if they don't do the cutting,
That's like one of the
or the next
easiest
day
skills.
until we can actually do the sampling to find out.
That's like one of the easiest ones for you guys to pick up.
It is.
You just drive by and you see the dude you doing it, and you're like, yeah, I'm coming back.
That's an easy. Well, the other thing is, a lot of times that's an easy willful violation.
Yes.
Because went on to one construction site and saw this. It was worse than this. You couldn't hardly see the two guys. They had it way out in the field. So what are those guys out there doing? Oh, they're cutting brick and block. Well, why are they out there? So they were only exposing 2 instead of 20.
Yeah, basically.
So I guess it's okay to kill those two
Yeah.
through silicosis, give those two silicosis,
Don't like them guys.
as long as you don't give the other 20 silicosis.
Like,
And we actually cited that company at Wilford because they knew and they still chose, that was their way of complying or
their mitigation.
mitigating risk. Some of the regional emphasis programs that we've got, the programs I just mentioned were national emphasis programs. Some of our regional emphasis programs that we have in Region 4, falls, anytime we see a fall, we stop and do an inspection. Even if there's no violation, but we see a fall hazard, we may not have an employee exposed, or they may have not started work, we're still going to stop and talk to them and tell them, hey, what are you doing? Here's some information. We want them to make sure they're protecting those workers. I mean, the idea isn't to sit there and watch and wait until they get somebody out there exposed and then say, hey, I got you. It's prevention. So anytime we see a fall, whether, if it's an exposure, we're going to do an inspection and cite it. If work hasn't started or there's no exposure, we're going to stop and do some compliance assistance and talk to them and say, hey, make sure you're doing this, make sure you're doing that, what's your plans, and look at what they're doing. And we spend a lot of time doing that.
Especially residential, I would think it'd be not hard to comply, but you have the small companies that the two guys are working and
yes.
Pump jacks versus just having ladder jacks or stand on a ladder or.
Yep. Yep. And that's common. I mean, you can drive through any neighborhood where we're building a house and find that going on.
Yeah.
So. Overhead power lines, anytime we see overhead power line work going, we're going to stop and talk to those folks. If we identify hazards where employees are exposed, we're going to address that through inspection. If not, once again, we're going to do compliance assistance because we want to make sure that they're grounding the lines, that they're not working them energized. If they are, they've got the proper PPE and proper work tools, things like that. Landscaping, same thing. Landscaping's huge. We have a lot of people. In Region 4, I would say in Region 4, we probably average at least 10 individuals being killed doing landscaping work, cutting grass. They love to run mowers into ponds and swimming pools, and then they get trapped and can't get out and drown. I had one where a guy had on a backpack blower, fell into the swimming pool, couldn't get the backpack blower off, couldn't swim, and drowned in the swimming pool.
Oh my gosh.
But we just have a lot of that going on. And then the other thing, a lot of, I've seen more weed eaters without guards on work sites than I have with guards. Same thing with mowers. I've seen more mowers without guards than I have with guards on sites. And it's an easy way to put your eye out. It's just a very easy way to suffer an eye. Auto parts manufacturing is big here. I know this is not of interest to you. We've had a lot of issues with auto parts manufacturers, particularly the Korean auto parts manufacturers. This is a big thing in Georgia and Alabama. We're doing a lot of enforcement work in these auto manufacturing plants. Our leadership has actually went to Korea and met with the ownership of Kia, Hyundai, some of those companies, to say, hey, you're going to have to do something with your parts manufacturers. We need your help. They're not doing what they need to do to protect their workers. You've got to come in and help us. So we've done a lot of work with auto parts manufacturing. Lead and silica, same thing. Anytime we see lead remediation work going on, water towers is a big one. Usually in water towers, a lot of times we have lead paint, and we've got silica going on because they're sandblasting. So, we're looking at sandblasting operations, we're looking at cutting operations, construction sites doing the brick and block cutting, anything like that, we're looking at for lead and silica. Forklifts, power industrial trucks, anytime we see a power industrial truck on a work site, we're going to inspect that forklift, we're going to inspect the operation, we're going to look at all that, provide technical information, once again, if they're not being used. Noise. We've got an emphasis program on noise on high noise industries, where we're doing a lot of enforcement on noise. And a lot of emphasis being placed on engineering controls. Everybody just wants to throw earplugs to the guys doing the work. you know, some of the work you all deal, you might deal with a flight line where you've got planes and stuff. It's hard to do any type of engineering control work in some of those situations. But when you're in a facility where you're cutting, say you got saws operating and shears operating, just creating noise, impact noise, you can put up baffles, or, I mean, you can install baffles on the equipment. You know, they may be sitting, you know, the equipment may be sitting flat on a concrete floor. All you do is put some rubber baffles to where it lessens that noise from an impact. You can hang noise barriers. You know, there's just a lot of things that can be done to engineer out noise. Ship and boat building and longshoring. What we're doing with that is we do a lot of inspections. We have programmed inspections in maritime where we're doing a lot of inspections on maritime sites. We ship and boat building. For example, is the tugboat explosion I told you about. We're doing a lot of work on those where we're actually inspecting those, trying to prevent things like that from happening, among other things. You know, one of our biggest things with ship and boat building and that type of industry is drownings. And guys being crushed where they're falling between boats or falling between vessels and falling into water and drowning. So putting a lot in that. Sanitation and meat processing. We see a lot of amputations as well as fatalities in sanitation during meat processing. If you're not familiar with meat processing, they normally run 3 shifts. 2 is processing, 1 is sanitation. USDA makes them sanitize the whole plant once a day. They have to spray it down, sanitize, has to go through inspection and pass inspection before they allow them to continue processing. Well, when they're doing that cleaning work, a lot of that stuff has to be run without guards. The saws, the chain lines, all kinds of moving parts and equipment is running unguarded because they can't clean it with it guarded. It's okay as long as they're a distance away from it, but what happens a lot of times is the guy will take a shortcut instead of shutting it off and locking it out, getting up there with a brush or something to try to hurry up and scrub something he sees, and he gets caught up in it. And that's why we put a lot of emphasis in sanitation and meat processing. And then poultry processing, just really high injury and illness rates in poultry processing. And we're doing lots of inspections in the poultry industry. So you don't eat chicken no more. Well, it took a while. It took a while. Helping responsible employers. And this is what we should be doing as OSHA. And personally, when I was a compliance officer, even back when I was a compliance officer, I was never the type of compliance officer that went into a facility, beat an employer up, found a bunch of violations, told them they had to fix them, you have to fix them by this date, you're going to be penalized, walked out and went on to the next one. My mindset has always been that I need to have an impact in that facility. When I walk in there, what impact am I going to have when I leave? And if I walk out there and I can't say, okay, identify these things, I provided abatement assistance on this, encouraged safety and health management system or safety and health management system improvement, encourage them to hire a consultant if they're smaller companies. If I wasn't doing those things, I wasn't doing my job. You have to have an impact. It's easy to go in and find things. It's harder to get them to change the way they're doing things. And that's what we as OSHA need to be doing, is helping them change their cultures and the way they're doing things.
How do you do that? You figure we work for the federal government, you get paid by the hour, you're going to get paid if you work 8 hours or 2 hours. Right. You still get employees cutting corners and that culture. How do you change that? What strategies have you used that seem to work?
That is a tough one. I really think
it's a cultural thing.
It starts at the top.
Yeah.
You've got to have commitment. Those employees got to see that top level management cares. Not that they're giving a bunch of lip service, that they truly care.
Yeah.
That they're willing to spend the money, that they're willing to provide the training, that they're willing to send this many people to Knoxville, Tennessee for a week of training, that it's got value, and we're going to send them there so that they can better do their jobs, and give them more tools and refresh things.
You know that plant in Wisconsin that blew up the ethanol plant.
Yeah.
It was killed 5.
Yeah.
You know, they had, for those who don't know, there's an ethanol plant that blew up in Wisconsin. They killed 5 dudes, and they had an on-scene amputation. They amputated the guy's legs. He's tracking structural steel. So one of my guardsmen worked at, but to make a long story short, they showed up, gave them the citation for over $1 million. And it was the guy, and the next day on the news, the owner of the company said, this is all bullshit. You know, he's complaining about the fine, so I'm taking this, and I'm like, dude, you just killed 5 people.
Yep.
Yeah.
You just killed 5 dudes, and you got a 24-year-old missing his legs. And now and he comes in, he's bitching about the fines. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I just couldn't believe it. And you think an organization from the top, because he was the CEO, would probably reflect a little bit more than about the dollar figure at that point.
Yep. But I'm going to tell you.
I don't even know if you could change that.
I'm going to tell you this. That used to be common. It's not as common now. I'm happy to say there has been a cultural shift in this country as it relates to safety and health. Things are nowhere near like they used to be. Back in the 90s, when I dealt with employers, sometimes you just knew something bad's going to happen here. Something bad's going to happen here. They don't get it. They don't care. It still happens, but it's a lot more rare today than what it is, what it used to be. Where's my
with that attitude, I hope you would set up an office there permanently.
Yeah. Where's my West Virginia guys? Gals. Does the name Massey mean anything to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he's running for office somewhere now.
Yep.
Anybody ever heard the name Massey? No offense to anybody whose last name's Massey. No, there's a gentleman that owned a coal company up in West Virginia. His name was Massey. Killed 20?
25.
Yeah. He killed 20 or 25 in a coal mine explosion. Just total negligence. Total willful criminal negligence on his part. And never ever really come out and showed any kind of remorse or anything. He's just a real dirtbag. You know, and I'll be the one to say that. He's just a real dirtbag. And you know, now he's running for public office. And I hope to God he doesn't get voted in. And he's not from West Virginia, by the way. I want to throw that out there. I won't say where he's from. He's not from West Virginia. But, you know, anyways, you know, and this is one of the big things that we deal with too. The small guy versus the big guy. What kind of resources does General Motors have for safety and health? Ford Motor Company. Unlimited. A buddy of mine works for Ford. I've actually got 3 friends that works for Ford Motor Company. But one guy is a safety manager, and his only responsibility is lockout tagout.
Oh my God.
He has no other responsibility. No, he doesn't. He is the lockout tagout safety manager. That's all he does is lockout tagout. That's the type of unlimited resources companies like that have. Okay, XYZ mom and pop landscaping company. Husband, wife, their 2 kids and 2 employees. What kind of resources do they got?
Mine, pop.
A little bit of PPE.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of resources they got? And you know, a quick story. I had a company that had an electrocution. Guy come in. He was from a small town in Georgia. Said, you know, come in for an informal conference. We, you know, had the fatality. We investigated it. Issued a citation for the hazard that caused the death, the electrocution. Come in, sit down, says, you know, I can't pay this penalty. You know, the only reason I'm in business is I've got these few guys. I think he had 3 or 4 employees. And he said there's nowhere to work. They don't have cars. If I don't do roofing work, and by the way, he was doing the job for free. The only thing he was getting paid was his guy's wages because he was doing it as a free job on a church. So he wasn't even making money off of it. And said, hey, I can't pay this penalty. The only reason I'm in business is so these guys aren't on welfare. So they've got a job and they got a little bit of pride in themselves. And he said, here's my checkbook. you can see, he said, this is all the money I've got. Open the checkbook. He had $12 in his checkbook. Ford Motor Company. We issue a citation to them for say the same thing.
They pay it on the way out.
No, that's not even a penny to them.
Yeah.
You know, versus this guy here who he's just trying to feed his family and keep a couple guys employed and keep them off the unemployment line. You know, we need a level playing field for workers, you know, for employers who are doing the right thing. And that includes small employers versus larger. Safety and health management systems, it's huge. You know what a safety and health management system is? It's your safety and health program. It's the whole system. It's training. It's enforcement. It's the whole package. It's your whole program and everything that's involved in that program. You saw the reduction, 60% since 1971. If you look at the fatality rates now, you'll look like 71 and clear up to the 80s, man. It was just boom. If you look at the graph, then it leveled out and it's just flat. And when I say flat, it's not really flat, but you can't see the drops because it's so small. Okay, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get that next big jump, that bump that drives that fatality rate down to where we go another 60% reduction? One of the answers is safety and health an effective safety and health management system. Not just a book that goes on the shelf that's a bunch of lip service. An effective safety and health management system. The very stuff that the gentleman before me was talking about, Dr. Love. The risk assessments. Mitigating those risks. Driving those risks to where they're a minimum, and you can say, hey, I'm confident that it's okay to go ahead and do this.
Question. So when it comes to that, I understand it's a culture, but you also got to look on the flip side if you're the business owner.
Yep.
It's a funding issue. So where do we decide? And obviously I'm not a CEO, so I wouldn't be that person, but you know, I mean, you got to make that decision as I agree. I'm preaching to the choir.
But yeah, you know what I'm saying. But that's where we've got to sell this. That's where we've got to show that business owner that electrical burn that you just suffered is costing you $1 million. If you to give him if you to give him the arc flash equipment, that arc flash equipment only cost you $1,800 versus $1 million. They've got to understand that. That's the key, is getting those individuals to understand that. And I know exactly what you're saying. I deal with it every day, especially with that small guy. You know, especially with that small guy.
In construction, it's everything.
Yes.
In construction, it's everything. They will lose their ass if they have a mishap on their construction site for a job. So if they bid it out, there's all kinds of equations and workman's comp costs and all that. But if they make $100,000 and they end up having an injury on it, they just lost half their profit.
Yeah.
The profit margins are so small in construction that if they have a horrible safety program, they will not be around very long.
Well, let me ask you this: do you all get involved in contracting at all?
Yeah.
What happens if they have their recordables are too high? What happens if they have too many OSHA citations? They're not even going to be able to bid that job.
No.
They can get their bidding. I deal with contractors every day, and they'll come in for an informal conference, and their primary argument, they don't come in to argue the citation that it's not valid, that they didn't do it. Is there any way you can help me? Because if I got this serious on my record, I'm not going to be able to work at the base. And all I don't do outside contracting. All I do is government contracting. I'm going to lose my livelihood. I work with those guys once or twice. When I see them back the third or fourth time, those arguments, they're a lot less effective for them. But you're absolutely right. You know, the smaller guys are the tough ones. That's why we've got free on-site consultation for those guys, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. But we've got things in place for them if they'll just take advantage of those things and agree to participate in those things. And me, I'm there every day. You can walk in my office and say, can you help me with this? I got some work going on and I really don't know what I need to be doing to handle this. I'm more than willing to do anything I can. I can't consult, I can't do things like that, but I can provide technical assistance. Yeah, these are our new recommended practices. I'm not going to go into this. You guys are doing this. You all have a safety management system. Management leadership, worker participation. That worker participation, in my opinion, is the biggest piece of the pie. If the workers don't participate, you're not going to have that. Safety is not anybody, it's none of our responsibility. I don't see safety as being my responsibility. The responsibility lies on the workers that's doing the work. They have got to commit to themselves and to their fellow co-workers that they're going to do what's right and they're going to do it safely. We've got these things in place, that's why they're in place, and this is the way we've got to do it. You know, it's hazard identification and assessment, your control, training, and then, obviously your improvement. That's why it's key to do benchmarking, to do audits of your entire program to make sure things are effective and things don't need to be tweaked. And then the one that was added, believe it or not, is multi-employer work sites. You know what that is? Multi-employer work site is basically what it says. It's a work site where you have more than one employer at that site. Construction site is the best example I can give. You got a general contractor and you have all those subs and all the sub-subs and all the sub-sub-subs and all the sub-sub-sub-sub-subs, however many levels there are. That's a multi-employer work site. And the way we tackle multi-employer work sites is we look at one employer as being a controlling employer. That's normally the general contractor. That contractor is responsible for the overall safety and health of that work site. The whole thing. All those contractors, everybody. They can be cited for anything I cite anybody else for if they're not doing their due diligence. We have a creating employer. That's the employer who created that hazard. That's the employer who left that floor hole uncovered that those employees can step into. We can cite them. You have an exposing employer. That's the employer that has employees working around that hole that wasn't covered that could fall into that hole. And then we have the correcting employer. That's the employer who is responsible for correcting that hazard. That can be one employer or that can be 4 or 5 different employers. It just depends. And that's how we tackle multi-employer work sites and that's how we look at them. One of the things we're trying to get changed in the law is we want to add another employer, and that's that construction manager that everybody wants to say, well, I'm not the general contractor, I don't have, because I'm the construction management company. The general contractor is responsible for the site. So essentially what we have is, you'll have a company that bids a contract. That's all they're doing is bidding a contract to make money. They're absolutely doing no work at all other than bidding that contract. As soon as they're awarded that contract, they bid that contract to a general contractor. A general contractor accepts the award from the guy who got the original, and then he brings in all of his subs and stuff. That guy at the top that's making all this money, he's the one making more money than anybody, is not being held accountable for anything. And that's one of the things that we're looking to try to change, is to where we can force accountability on those individuals who are kind of walking away scot-free from anything.
How about residential, you're a homeowner, you hire someone?
You're a homeowner. You're not in business, you're not making money.
So you can cite the...
It would be the contractor. Yeah, we can't cite...
Even if you're the general contractor?
Yeah, we can't cite a homeowner because they don't have employees. There's no employer-employee relationship. So they're not covered under the OSHA Act.
Farming is something that's changed, right, or another focus area of OSHA recently?
Yes, we are doing more with farming. Farming is a different animal. It's agriculture. Anybody familiar with appropriations? One of the biggest challenges we have is with Congress puts out their appropriations bill, and a lot of these contractors, a lot of small construction contractors, farmers, a lot of agricultural sick codes fall under appropriations, and we can't do anything. And that's one of the things we battle with farming. And it's been a headache of mine for a couple of years now. Safe and Sound campaign. I'm going to just touch on this real quick. We've got a Safe and Sound campaign. There's going to be a week in August where we're doing a Safe and Sound campaign where we're just promoting safety and health management systems. And we want people to participate. Every business and workplace needs a safety and health program. And we're just, like I said, it's just an emphasis program where we're trying to put emphasis on safety and health management systems. The AGC has got a lot of good stuff on their website for construction safety. Use their website. They've got a lot of good tools, a lot of good checklists, things like that can be used. This is basically what we're trying to get to with safety and health. If you look at this curve, bell curve, we're trying to shift from inspections and civil penalties where employers are in compliance assistance and recognition program sectors. You know, right now, if you look at you got half in inspection and civil penalties, the other half in compliance assistance. This is what we want to see. We want to see a lot less inspection and civil penalties and a lot more in compliance assistance, as well as the recognition programs. That's what's going to drive the accident, the injury and illness rates down, as well as the fatality rates. Is that right there? Once again, PPP, SHARP, our alliance program. We're doing a lot with alliances, partnerships, where we're partnering with construction companies. Some of the examples of partnerships we've had is the Atlanta Braves Stadium in Georgia, the aquarium in Georgia. The aquarium in Georgia, I think, was a 3 or 4 year project. Did not have one, I don't really want to say serious injury. Basically had very minor incidents and injuries on that site with the level of work that was being done. I mean, it was really impressive because they did tons of training, tons of inspections with OSHA involvement, and it was just phenomenal. And the difference in a partnership and alliance, if you don't know, partnerships have an enforcement element, alliances do not. Alliances are more geared towards training. Like we'll have an alliance with a group to do training in scaffolding to a specific group. So that's the difference in an alliance and a partnership.
So do you educate your smaller employers that have, say, only a handful of employees, do you work with the alliance then? If you recommend them call us and we'll work with you and kind of assist you?
The alliance has got to have value. It's got to add value, and it's got to impact a large worker group. Is what we want to see, because there's a lot of work in them, a lot of effort, a lot of money that's spent on them. So we want to make sure that the impact's there and the value is there. Yes. This is our on-site consultation. They do a lot of work, and I'm going to tell you, if you ever need help with something, and it's a specific area, and this is one of the areas where we're helping small employers, because this is free to small employers, say noise. You can call Georgia Tech if you're in Georgia. They can come out and help you evaluate your noise and help you implement programs and implement controls for your noise problems. They also do like overall consultation to cover your entire program. I recommend to small employers that they do that every 3 years at a minimum to help them stay on top of things. And these are the kind of things that we got in play. Every state is required to have a consultation program. So every state in the United States has consultation. And like I said, it's free to small employers. These are our stand downs for this year. We're doing a lot of work with these stand downs. We're asking employers for specific stand downs to stop work for an hour and do training, to bring emphasis back to a particular hazard area. We have a Georgia Struck By stand down. You can go to the AGC page, Georgia AGC page, recommend, even if you're not in Georgia, to participate in this. You can sign up on their webpage. And what they're asking to do is just to do an hour stand down, have a meeting, or do some training. Just bring emphasis to those struck by hazards. We have a Region 4 landscaping stand down that's set to start April 17th and 18th. Same thing. We just want we want contractors to stand down and cover those hazards associated with landscaping. You know, if you go back to your base, you want to participate, sign up for it on the webpage. You know, get your contractors together that do your mowing operations and things like that, your landscaping, and you know, have a meeting with them. Do a little training with them. National Fall Stand Down, May 7th through 11th. Heat illness prevention stand down is huge, May 22nd through 24th, and then Safe and Sound is 13th through the 19th.
Mr. Parson briefed that we saw earlier, the National Fall Protection Stand Down and the Safety Stand, Safe and Sound.
Yeah.
That will be on the website for
Yeah.
everyone, for us and
Yeah, all these are on our website.
Yep.
Yeah, all
It'll be on ours as well.
Yeah. The heat illness is another big one, because we are doing a lot to tackle heat illness. It's really been an area of focus for us over the last few years. We feel like we've had way too many lurkers suffer from heat illness as well as heat strokes. And I had my first death related to heat last year on a naval base in Tennessee. I know it sounds crazy, naval base in Tennessee, but no, it was Millington in Memphis. And we had a contractor that fell out on the military base because of heat, and it was extremely preventable, you know, through hydration breaks, things that you can do. Anybody here like apps? Phone apps? We've got a heat illness app that is outstanding. It's the NIOSH OSHA heat app. You can just type in NIOSH and it should come up. But you can put in your area code and it will give you your temperatures, your humidity, and then you can scroll down and look at what your mitigating actions are to protect your workers or your employees from that heat stress. You know, and I'm going to tell you the key is hydration, hydration, hydration. Can't drink a lot, they have to drink enough, and they have to do it often enough. And if they don't, they're going to have problems. And then the other thing with hydration is you can't start the day up. You got to start the day before, and then after work you got to rehydrate and start over again for the next day.
Why does it say $20 on the name?
It should be $20. If it is, that's good. Anybody familiar with OSHA Quick Takes?
I get them every week.
If you do not get these, you need to sign up for them. Great information. Great, tons of information comes out in those. And they come out fairly often, but just different subjects, different topics, things like that. Field Federal Safety and Health Council is something I want to talk about. Anybody in here active with Field Federal Safety and Health Councils? If you're not, you need to be. Tremendous resource, tremendous opportunity to network with other federal agencies. And even bigger than that, you all bring a ton of value to those Field Federal Safety and Health Councils. With your safety and health management system and the policies and stuff that you have in place, you can provide a lot of assistance to other federal agencies, those little small agencies that don't have the resources that you may have and the knowledge that you may have that may save a life.
Who sets that up? Is that the local office or the regional office? Or?
You can check with your area, or you can check with your local area office, OSHA office, but also you can go on our website. I put the Region 4 in here. These are our Field Federal Safety and Health Councils where we have councils in Region 4. Or I'm sorry, this is all the regions. Region 1 through 10. So this isn't, Region 4 is Alabama, Florida, Georgia. We have it in every state. We have more Field Federal Safety and Health Councils in Region 4 than they do anywhere else in the country. But, you know, we do training, provide information, networking resources. It's just a tremendous opportunity to get to know people, to just develop that network of resources.
You also will meet, usually you'll have somebody from OSHA, the local area OSHA will attend.
Yes, sir.
You'll have could be TSA, all the other federal employees show up within that area too.
Yeah, and we always have strong participation from our military folks, the VA, Coast Guard, including Coast Guard. We have, one of the biggest that we have in Tennessee is Tennessee Valley Authority, because the work that they do with their power system and the programs that they have is tremendous. Same thing with the Army Corps of Engineers. They participate a lot, and we gain a lot from the Corps on their work processes and safety and health and what they're doing. But it's, like I said, if you're not participating in those, you're really missing something. Any questions?
First one, are you aware of the, I don't want to assume, the 13-year-old boy that in Los Angeles that spent 12 hours in a drainage system?
It was what?
A 12-year-old, a 13-year-old boy, just April 1st, fell in a drainage system?
I haven't heard that.
Okay, so my question to you, here's the scenario, is he's playing in Los Angeles Park this Sunday. Drainage system was covered by a just piece of wood. Fell in, spent 12 hours, had to be rescued, just got rescued 12 hours later. My question to you, assuming that it's a city park, not protecting the potential, or in this case, hazard, as a compliance officer, you know, OSHA would come on board and investigate it. And, you know, what? No.
We wouldn't investigate that. We don't have jurisdiction on that.
On a
Not on a kid. It's not an employee.
not on a city.
The most we would do on something like that is possibly provide technical assistance to the people that's doing the rescue work and things like that.
Okay.
We do go out on stuff like that on occasion, when it's, especially when it's needed or requested, just to make sure the rescue workers are doing stuff appropriately and safely.
So I guess the weakness here.
I know that sounds bad.
No, I'm with you. I'm trying. So I guess my concern or my question would be, who's keeping, let's say, the city park, the city or the town? You know, it was a confined space. It was obviously it was a sewer system.
That civil lawsuit to follow.
There's going to be a major civil lawsuit to follow that for sure.
Okay.
If it was an employee cutting grass for contractors, then you would.
Yes, absolutely.
How OSHA would be in that one?
It would be the state OSHA, because we don't have jurisdiction over,
Okay.
you know, public sector employees.
So no one's keeping honest with that piece of plywood?
No, actually, building inspectors, like if you see something like that, I would call the building inspector's office. Because I promise you, they're going to go out there and do something with that and address that.
Sure.
You know, I would say building inspector's office. If you know who the contractor is, I'd be shocked if a contractor isn't going to go out there and say, and do something else, especially if someone calls.
Yeah.
And if they don't, whatever happens with the lawsuit, they deserve.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, I found it interesting when you mentioned landscaping mishaps or accidents. And I can just only guess, but you're drowning in the pool. What would be your recommendations? I'm assuming that, you know, it's a leaf blower and he's cleaning up, he or she's cleaning up the area, and it falls in the in-ground pool and drowns because of the equipment.
Yeah.
So you go and investigate.
Yeah.
I can only assume what the recommendations would be to prevent that.
Well, one thing, I think we issued a 5A1 general duty violation on that. The big reason was the guy couldn't swim. And having him working around water without being able to swim.
The next month.
And the other thing was he was left alone by himself. They needed to have more
Okay, so you just
coordination and contact. The supervisor or the owner of the company should have been checking on these guys
Yeah.
to make sure, you know, they're okay.
I just found it interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I noticed on one of your slides, the national emphasis programs you have.
Yes.
I noticed the fifth one down is healthcare.
Yep.
So I'm a safety specialist at VA,
Yeah.
VA Boston.
Yeah.
What's your largest emphasis going on right now in terms of healthcare?
In terms of healthcare, we're looking strongly at ergonomics because of that's what the issue is. in healthcare. Well, two primary issues in healthcare: ergonomics, workplace balance. That's the two strongest areas. And with you, as you know, your system, I can't remember what it's called. You all do more with the other inspection.
NFPA, all that kind of.
Yes,
TACO.
versus OSHA. Joint Commission. Your Joint Commission is even bigger than what we are, which helps you comply, I think, with a lot of what we do.
I'm on the 7th floor and I'm going to jump up and I drive.
But ergonomics and workplace balance.
Yeah, I think
That was.
I don't know. I don't know. There's lobbyists. I don't know. If they do, it needs to be industry specific versus general ergonomics. I mean, they need to. That's how they need to tackle it. Is through specific industry versus a general ergonomic standard.
Any more questions? All right.
I just wanted to say thank every one of you for your service and what you do for this country. It's tremendous. It's greatly appreciated, and it does not go unacknowledged. So, thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you do for employee safety and health.
Bill?
And one other thing, I'll do a little recruiting right now. OSHA's doing a lot of hiring, so watch the website. No, you all bring a lot of value. You all bring a lot of value, and believe it or not, I'm actually in the process of trying to hire 2 Air National Guard safety professionals right now.
Business cards are right up here. Hey, I just want to say one thing, Bill.
Sorry if I offended anybody. I need good people.
You took time out of your busy schedule. I know you couldn't make this at first, and something got changed out, and you were able to come back and give this presentation. Great job. I want to thank you, and sir, I'd like
thank you for having me. It means more to me that you had me.
Thank you. On behalf of the Air National Guard, this is for you.
Cards are up here. Pick one up. If you ever have any questions or any comments.